turbulence within the FIA appears to be heading in a new direction, and the current, often polarizing president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, may soon find himself under heavier scrutiny than ever before. The former Emirati rally driver now faces an unexpected challenge to his leadership, from none other than Carlos Sainz Sr., a revered figure in the motorsport world. According to multiple reports, the father of current Williams driver Carlos Sainz Jr. is quietly gathering considerable support from influential figures across the racing ecosystem. This development raises a pivotal question. Are we on the brink of a seismic leadership shift within the FIA? And more urgently, what internal conflicts or ethical dilemmas might need addressing before such a transition can legitimately occur? Behind closed doors, there's a growing movement within the FIA's upper echelons, as Carlos Sainz Sr., a four-time Dakar rally champion and respected veteran of the sport, contemplates a run at the presidency. His potential rival, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, has been embroiled in continuous controversy since assuming the role in 2021. From questionable decision-making to communication breakdowns within the federation, Ben Sulayem's leadership has raised serious concerns. Though he has yet to officially announce whether he'll seek re-election, it's widely assumed he intends to fight to retain his position. But Sainz Sr. is no mere symbolic opponent. The buzz around his candidacy is growing louder, with several influential names in motorsport reportedly endorsing his potential campaign. His status as a no-nonsense professional with a long-standing legacy in rally racing makes him a formidable alternative for those who seek a steadier, more collaborative governance model within the FIA. Speaking about his ambitions to take on Ben Sulayem, Sainz Sr. was characteristically measured yet firm. "This is something I've been mulling over for a while, not obsessively, but enough to recognize that the timing feels right. I believe I can build a competent and passionate team, one that can give something meaningful back to motorsport. I've accumulated a wealth of experience over the years, and I'm convinced I have ideas that could refresh and elevate both racing and the broader automotive world." Initially, speculation swirled around Susie Wolff as a possible contender for the FIA presidency. However, after she ruled herself out of the race, the path seems increasingly clear for what may become a heated duel between Sainz Sr. and Ben Sulayem. A central reason behind this showdown is the long list of controversies that have marred Ben Sulayem's tenure, perhaps most notably the recent scandal involving derogatory remarks that sent shockwaves through the Formula One paddock. Critics argue that the current president has treated the FIA as his personal fiefdom, often making unilateral decisions without adequate consultation with internal professionals or external stakeholders. In contrast, Sainz Sr. is seen by many as a grounded, principled figure, a man whose credibility stems not only from his accolades on the dirt tracks of Dakar, but also from his measured demeanor and reputation for fairness. Still, one thorny issue remains on the table: the potential conflict of interest stemming from his son's active participation in Formula One. Sainz Sr., however, downplayed those concerns, arguing that his decades-long track record in motorsport stands on its own. "Yes, my son competes in Formula One. But people who know me know my values. I've built a name through years of dedication and results. If I take this role, I'll immediately step back from anything related to Carlos Jr.'s racing career. That part's non-negotiable. But it won't interfere. My integrity is something I value above all else." Whether or not the motorsport community will rally behind Sainz Sr. remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the winds of change are blowing through the corridors of the FIA, and the outcome could reshape the very foundation of how global motorsport is governed in the years to come. He's no longer a rookie. After 10 years competing at the pinnacle of motorsport, it's clear he's matured far beyond the boy who once debuted in Formula One. And both father and son know that if Carlos Sainz Sr. moves forward with this political leap, their personal and professional relationship will inevitably shift. That's simply the reality of entering the realm of FIA leadership. Of course, the FIA is supposed to be a rigorously neutral and professionally governed body, and on paper, no conflict of interest should arise. But the truth is, the waters are already churning, and the signs point to a growing and increasingly compelling case in favor of Sainz Sr.'s candidacy. The internal machinery of the FIA is under heavy strain. There's been an exodus of key figures, and perhaps the most symbolic departure has been that of Robert Reid, who served as Vice President of Sport. His resignation was a tipping point, the latest blow in what appears to be a slow but steady unraveling of trust within the governing body. Reid cited a fundamental breakdown in governance practices as the reason behind his decision to step away. He didn't mince words. He believes the FIA no longer upholds the standards it claims to represent. And then came a second thunderclap. On the very same day Reid stepped down, former FIA CEO Natalie Robin broke her months-long silence. Robin, who was forced out last summer after just a year and a half in the role, spoke candidly to BBC Sport about the ongoing dysfunction within the FIA. Her comments were damning. She described a leadership culture plagued by structural weaknesses, where due process was routinely ignored and key stakeholders were systematically excluded from decision-making processes. These revelations have only added fuel to the fire for those calling for leadership reform. Criticism continues to pile up against current President Mohammed Ben Sulayem. One of the more notable condemnations came from former race director Tim Mayer, who didn't hold back. According to Mayer, Ben Sulayem had difficulty accepting input from other influential voices within the FIA and often disregarded guidance that didn't align with his personal views. He went so far as to say that Ben Sulayem genuinely believed drivers should be penalized for using foul language, a stance that, Mayer pointed out, began to manifest in how the FIA approached disciplinary matters. Although technically, FIA regulations do restrict offensive language, the broader issue is whether it's truly worth the effort to police drivers' vocabulary so rigidly. And yet, Ben Sulayem's apparent willingness to personally intervene, albeit through staff channels, has blurred the lines between administrative leadership and direct involvement in race adjudication. There's an undeniable demand for transformation. Even Ben Sulayem himself has conceded the need for structural reform, particularly concerning Appendix B of the FIA's International Sporting Code, the section related to the moral integrity and conduct of officials and participants. It's a small but telling gesture that he chose to address the matter in public after facing substantial feedback from drivers across the 7 FIA World Championships. In an attempt to reframe the conversation, he stated, "Following constructive input from our drivers, I'm evaluating improvements to Appendix B. As someone who competed in rallying, I empathize with the pressures they endure. Appendix B is a vital part of our International Sporting Code and plays a crucial role in maintaining the sport's inclusivity. Rules are created by people, and people can improve them. That philosophy of continuous development is something I've always stood by and is central to everything we aim to achieve within the FIA." But that's not where the story ends. Reports have emerged suggesting that Ben Sulayem is also considering slashing the sport's financial regulations, potentially even scrapping the budget cap altogether. It's a bombshell proposal, one that could completely upend the current landscape of Formula One. The cost cap, introduced to level the playing field, has been instrumental in reducing the performance gap between smaller teams and big-budget giants. In recent seasons, we've witnessed greater parity on the grid precisely because teams are operating within similar financial constraints. Yet, Ben Sulayem argues that the budget cap has become more of a burden than a benefit. He believes it's generating more headaches than harmony in the paddock, with teams constantly skirting the edges of compliance and dealing with complex audits and restrictions. From his perspective, removing the limit might offer a return to true innovation, a sentiment that isn't shared by everyone. So now, against this backdrop of executive resignations, internal discontent, and philosophical divisions about the sport's future, the emergence of Carlos Sainz Sr. as a possible challenger gains greater weight. His candidacy symbolizes not just a change in leadership but a potential shift in how the FIA governs, consults, and evolves. Yet even with all these fractures visible on the surface, one looming question remains. Will the motorsport community rally behind a man whose son still races under the very regulations he'd be overseeing? Sainz Sr. has addressed the issue directly, dismissing the idea of a conflict of interest by pointing to his long-standing career and unblemished reputation. "I understand the concern. But people who know me, who have followed my career, know where I stand. My involvement with Carlos Jr. would end immediately if I take on this role. I wouldn't risk the integrity of either of us. My record speaks for itself, and I'm committed to leading in a way that is fair, transparent, and focused on the sport, not personal agendas. As the cracks deepen within the FIA and frustrations mount across the motorsport landscape, many are beginning to wonder if this is the moment when the federation finally hits the reset button. And if so, will Carlos Sainz Sr. be the one holding his finger over it? Diving deeper into the controversy, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem recently addressed the financial regulations head-on, stating bluntly, "I'm reviewing the cost cap, and all it's done is give the FIA endless headaches. So really, what's the point? I genuinely don't see the value in it." But despite his openness to rethinking the current system, his views haven't earned him much support from some of the sport's biggest names. Top drivers like Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and even George Russell remain highly skeptical. In fact, Lewis, who plays a central role in the Grand Prix Drivers Association, has been especially vocal about the FIA's lack of transparency and its consistent failure to include drivers in key decisions. For many in the paddock, this exclusion is more than frustrating. It's alarming. Despite being the individuals who put their lives on the line every race weekend, drivers have almost no influence over FIA rulings. This is particularly relevant to the recent debate around Appendix B and the FIA's promise to revise it. Both Hamilton and Russell have raised serious doubts about whether any meaningful changes will actually occur. As Lewis pointed out, "At the end of the day, we have no real power on the ground, and in my opinion, that needs to change. You have people making decisions for others without ever having been in their shoes. That's why having a driver's perspective is so important, and all we're trying to offer." But Hamilton's frustrations with the governing body run much deeper than just Appendix B. One example that still lingers in the minds of fans and critics alike is the infamous jewelry ban in 2022. Hamilton pushed back strongly at the time, even showing up to the Monaco Grand Prix wearing every piece of jewelry he owned as a form of protest. It was a symbolic moment that underscored just how fractured the relationship between the FIA and its top drivers had become. And then there was the incident involving Susie Wolff. Hamilton was still with Mercedes when the FIA launched a baseless investigation into an alleged conflict of interest between Susie and her husband, team principal Toto Wolff. The probe was dropped quietly, but the damage had already been done. Susie's reputation took a hit, and it once again exposed the FIA's dysfunction and lack of accountability. Meanwhile, George Russell doesn't seem optimistic either. He believes that despite all the noise, the FIA has failed to follow through with real action. According to Russell, "We keep hearing talk of reform, but we're nowhere near an agreement. What we want is implementation, not endless discussion. Everyone can say they're considering something, but we want to see it actually happen." And that's the heart of the issue. Until words turn into concrete action, all these statements mean very little to the drivers, or to fans. Which brings us back to the bigger question. Could Carlos Sainz Sr. be the change the FIA desperately needs? Is he the right person to restore credibility and reconnect the federation with the athletes who power the sport? And even more pressing, has the time come for Mohammed Ben Sulayem to step aside and sever ties with the organization he's led into such turbulent waters? Let us know what you think down in the comments. And when you're done, don't forget to tap the video on your screen right now for more exclusive insights.